I mean, Friday mornings can be a little bit different here, or
Yeah,
difficult here in the U.S.
I know it's one of the slower days for social media because people are they've done it for the week and they're ready to hang it up and go celebrate the weekend, which I totally understand. But I appreciate you chatting with me, Hisham. Seeing you online and both being involved in Cosmos, it's nice to put a voice with the name. Although I've seen you, on your X profile talking about Agoric and doing some other things, and maybe this is the first time that we have ever hosted a Twitter Spaces or an X Spaces. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Atlas Staking is a validator across multiple ecosystems, but we love Cosmos, just absolutely love it. And Hisham and I kind of cross paths because we're currently trying to get into the active set of the Cosmos Hub validators, and then we just started chatting online, and we can talk about that later. But Hisham, how about you tell everyone about the really cool integration with Agoric and how that is going to help people who want to trade and use the Elys protocol.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, and thanks for hosting the space. Pretty exciting for you guys. I think you said this was your first one that you've hosted, so hopefully first of many more to come in the future. And I want to be very supportive, of course, of your effort to get on the active set in Cosmos Hub. I know there's a few validators out there that would really like to get in, and being an active, not just active on in terms of network security, but active in the community, being very easy to contact and having like an education focused mindset is so important in this space. So it would be a really welcome addition to have you guys. And then hopefully we can get into later in this space, like how we can support your campaign, because I know you have a link about that you could probably share. And then hopefully some people can jump on board that as well with that effort. But yeah, thanks for that, for leading that into Agoric. This is something that we were excited to be a keynote speaker at ETH Denver this week. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it in person, but they were nice enough to let me record it and then send it over. But our Agoric integration is going to be really exciting. It's one of the pieces of our roadmap relating to AI integration that we're just so thrilled to roll out. And kind of the timeline for that is about Q3 of this year. But what Agoric really does, not just for Elys Network, but really for all the chains out there, is it introduces what's called an orchestration API. So the orchestration is essentially like a smart contract on steroids. It will allow you to customize any kind of smart contract you want across multiple chains, and it can be either event or time based in terms of how it automates. So the example I used in the keynote was, let's say I'm staking Atom. I can set my Agoric orchestration smart contract to claim my staking rewards on a certain schedule or based on a certain trigger, like a certain amount of Atom staking rewards. I can have it claim those staking rewards and then IBC transfer it over to Elys Network. And then from there, I can program it to provide liquidity or stake it in the Atom earn pool when that rolls out, or swap it to Elys or whatever I want, right? So it will conduct all of those things in sequence for me, fully automated. I don't have to be there, and it can do it on any kind of schedule I want. So I'm really, really excited to roll this out on a very basic level. We'll use it for things like automatic restaking. So if you're staking Elys and you receive Eden rewards, you'll be able to claim the Eden and Eden boost on a schedule on whatever event or time you want, and then restake those. And then you'll also be receiving USDC from your staking rewards. So you can program the smart contract to do whatever you want with the USDC, provide liquidity, put it in the USDC earn pool, swap it for Elys or Atom or whatever token you want. So really exciting. Long-term view, there'll be a lot of other really cool things that come from that, like portfolio rebalancing, and some other really creative tools, which really just use your imagination on what you can do with it. Because you can essentially, if you can think about it and you can program it, it can exist as an orchestration smart contract. So we're really, really excited about that.
I happen to be an Elys staker myself, and so not having to log in to claim and restake would be awesome. Is that something that is just push button on the platform, and is the orchestration API currently integrated, or is that something that's coming real soon?
So we have to enable Cosmos, I believe, on our chain, which we had previously done in testnet, but we haven't done it in mainnet. So that's going to be one of the prerequisites. We'll also have the option to either do it directly from Agoric chain or essentially like integrate it into our front end so you can access the orchestration API directly from Elys. So it'll look like you're still on the Elys platform, but you'll be actually interacting with theirs. So that's coming probably like right now. Our engineers are actually working almost every day with the Agoric team to build this out. So like I said, I think we're targeting, we could probably have like a very like basic interface, next quarter, but it's probably more likely going to be Q3. And I don't know if Maxime, if you have, let me see, do we have him as a speaker? Oh, I think he dropped off.
Says listener.
Oh, okay. It looks like he might have dropped off. Okay, but yeah, Maxime might have some more information exactly on like how that's going. But it's gonna be pretty exciting. I think it's available. I don't know which other chains are using it right now, but I believe there's still pretty like there's still a lot more coming on their end as well in terms of their build out.
I love it. Maxime has been added as a speaker, so whenever you want to chime in, go for it. I see you're unmuted.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. Like that's very cool. And hello everyone, by the way, and hello Hisham as well.
Hi, Maxime.
So yeah, happy to be there as well. Like I don't really know what you want to talk about on this space. Mostly, I think like about Cosmos overall and like Elys, by the way. But like I will jump in every time I have an occasion to say something relevant.
Oh, okay.
I will let you chat.
Sorry. Okay, so you might have dropped off when we were talking about Agoric. So okay, I was just gonna have you jump in and like add anything else regarding the Agoric, like the timeline for the integration, because I know on our roadmap we're targeting Q3, but if you had any other information regarding like their integration, like the timeline, if you have any more specifics on that. But otherwise, we could probably just stick with the Q3 timeline. I think that's probably more realistic.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I don't know if we have any timeline on our side right now. I know that the devs are actually working on that from what we heard in the weekly stand-up yesterday. But like everything going well, I think there is some thing to tricks here and there, but the Agoric team is working on it. So that's the last update I have.
Nice. I would be curious why partial set security versus spinning up your own chain.
That is a great question. So when we were in testnet, we were actually a sovereign chain, and then we didn't integrate the partial set security until the very end. A lot of that comes from the very beginning, we always had a vision to be atom aligned. We were always kind of wanting to be like a major contributor to the Cosmos Hub. And we always believed that having a strong connection with them was such an important part of growing the entire ecosystem, being a good ambassador, from like an outside user, a centralized exchange user, a brand new user, anybody who hadn't yet experienced Cosmos. We wanted to be a great like entry point or first look for the Cosmos Hub. And we found like, in the early days, the only real option if you wanted to use network security from the Cosmos Hub was ICS. So interchain security, your options were to have full network security from every validator, which is essentially what Stride and Neutron have. And for us, that wasn't really a compatible design based on the size of our chain. So we had been speaking with developers from the Cosmos Hub, it was Interchain Labs, Interchain Foundation, at the time Atom Accelerator DAO, which of course is being sunset, and then Informal Systems, who was kind of like a caretaker back then. And they had been telling us that they were rolling out a partial set security design, which allowed you to have interchain security, but with a much smaller validator set. So it made a lot of sense for what we were trying to build. And it kind of cemented our relationship with the Cosmos Hub to be like truly atom aligned. So we loved the concept, and we were actually pretty excited to be one of the first ones to launch it. And by being one of the first ones and being involved in the design phase, we actually got to put our hands on some of the parameters and some of the actual customizations within it. So we were excited to have it to be like an actual player in building it. And so far, we're very, very happy with it. We have 36 validators. We have an active set of up to 40. So we have actually 4 more slots. And
let me jump in there real quick.
Sure,
So
sure.
we spun up our Cosmos Hub validator, knowing that we were going to be inactive for a long time, and we were hoping to validate consumer chains. And when we heard that inactive validators would have the opportunity to run infrastructure for consumer chains, we were stoked. And so far, the opportunity hasn't really presented itself, and we do intend to get into the active set, and we do intend to support Elys. We are a Stride governor and did run infrastructure for Stride before they jumped onto the hub. Can you help us understand when it might suit the project to use inactive validators since their voting power is so small?
That's a good question. I think it's really more of a decision for the validator themselves, because we do not blacklist or whitelist. Probably whitelist is the better word. We don't have a whitelist of validators, which is one of the parameters you can actually choose. You can actually choose to whitelist your own validators. So you can select, for example, if you were worried about your validator set being too top heavy, you could actually say, well, I don't want those validators to be my validators. I want like maybe validators from like the bottom 50 or the bottom 100, and you could actually select which validators you wanted for your set. Since ours is not run that way, ours is a top percentage. We actually just use voting power, just strictly from top to bottom, and we don't. The only excluded validators for Elys Network are centralized exchange validators, because we don't think it's right to have, like, for example, like Coinbase being a validator for Elys Network. Not that they would want to be anyway.
Yes.
Because I think they have other things on their plate. But we think that that's kind of just a generally fair system that anybody can opt in. So today, Atlas Staking could be a validator for Elys Network if they wanted to be. But you're right, the voting power would be so small, I'm not sure the rewards would really cover your infrastructure. So it's really more of a decision for the validator themselves on whether it makes sense to do so from their end.
Well, hopefully within the next 60 days or so, we'll be in the hub active set, and we'll have a little more voting power to support you guys. But yeah, whenever I see Coinbase and Binance and the other centralized exchanges in like the top 10 validator spots on multiple chains, I just cringe. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen online where someone will unbond from Coinbase, whatever token it is, and then after 21 days, they still don't have access to their tokens, and they can't pull them off. And after FTX and Celsius and Voyager and all that stuff, and I own Coinbase stock, full disclosure, and I use it a lot. I love it, and I think that they are a total ally for the crypto industry, given what they've done politically. And so I'm not trying to bash Coinbase specifically, but yeah, we love to educate people and teach the value of self-custody, and the yield at the end of the day is so much higher, and that can make just an enormous difference in someone's portfolio over time. One of the things I'm curious about is, so obviously Osmosis has been around for a lot longer than Elys, and we happen to be an Osmosis validator, and it's the DEX that I personally have used for a long time. How do you receive it, and how do you feel when you see the community saying the hub should merge with Osmosis, or the hub should buy out Osmosis, that kind of stuff, and what goes through your mind when you see those conversations?
I love the conversation. I'm a big Osmosis supporter. I own a lot of Osmosis, and I love Sunny, and I love what their team does over there. They ship fast, they innovate, they have a great product, a great UI. They do something different than Elys Network, right? What we do versus what they do are actually very complementary. So, I've mentioned this, like, in a lot of like our internal chats and like the Telegram chats that we're in, the Atomoji chat. We don't compete with Osmosis, right? Like, so we don't have our sights set on in any way taking any liquidity from any other chain that we like really highly respect or like partner with. So within the Cosmos ecosystem, we actually think that would actually be like a pretty dangerous mindset for any team to want to come in and compete with another chain in the ecosystem, because liquidity is already low in Cosmos. So trying to essentially just have like a lateral liquidity move from one chain to another within Cosmos is a net neutral move. It's a net zero move, but it's actually more destructive than it is constructive. So when you think about when you're trying to, from the inside looking out, trying to promote new users to come into the space, and from them observing you, and all you do is take each other's liquidity back and forth, and you have, what they call like vampire liquidity schemes, or like mercenary capital, where like some user keeps basically jumping from one chain to the next, like farming their rewards within Cosmos. An outside user would look at that and be like, "Whoa, I don't want to be a part of that. That looks terrible," right? So we are very, very big on wanting to actually build like a unified front with Osmosis, with DYDX, Injective, obviously the Cosmos Hub, to go out there and essentially present this really strong like marketing effort and like unification campaign, so that somebody from like Ethereum or Solana or a centralized exchange would look at us and say, wow, this is where I want to be. And I've mentioned this before, that Solana did an excellent job doing that, right? There might have been some infighting and some bickering going on within internal projects that were competing with each other in Solana, but they never presented that externally. They always showed up with a unified front, man. Their marketing was solid. They're like, their user base was solid. Like everybody knew that we have to not air dirty laundry to the outside community if we want more people to come to Solana. And it worked, right? So I know that's kind of a digression from your question, but I wanted to start off with that because that's a really, really important piece of like why we think the way that we do. So when we hear the conversation of, should Osmosis be merged with Cosmos Hub, or should somebody buy somebody else or whatever, honestly, we support the conversation. Wherever the community wants to go, and as long as they're unified and have consensus on it, then we support it. So if Cosmos Hub does intend to or has interest in buying Osmosis, they should absolutely do the research, right? They should go through the due diligence, do the analysis on it, find out if it makes sense to do so. I know Magnus has mentioned it a few times about what it would take to do so. And since realistically, like the treasury, can't purchase Osmosis, there would have to be some other deal, right? There'd have to be either a minting of Atom, which would require governance, or some other way to essentially have like a merger where each side brings cash to the table, right? And so there's a whole lot that needs to be discussed, and I'm certainly not the person to go to on that one, because I'm not a mergers and acquisitions expert, right? But the conversation is really cool. Like, it's really exciting to hear people talk about, okay, how do we, from like the business mindset, determine our path forward? And we should always encourage those types of conversations, even if we disagree with them. There's a lot of good that comes out of it on the other side in terms of best practices.
Yeah, and I think you guys differentiate yourselves because you're really trying to convert people who are using centralized exchanges and bring them into DeFi. Is that right?
That's correct. So that is the major distinction for us right now, is because we try to source our liquidity outside of the Cosmos ecosystem versus trying to get it from inside. We are trying to actually promote growing the entire pie. So we view this as, if we can convert a centralized exchange user or bring a user over from Solana or Ethereum, they'll come over, they'll get a first look at Elys, and then they may see, oh, well, I can't buy this token that I want on Elys, but I can buy it on Osmosis. Cool, okay, I'll just IBC transfer over to Osmosis. So we actually think we can grow the pie that way. So we've said this before, that Elys is good for Osmosis and Osmosis is good for Elys. The other thing that we do is, because of the way that our pools are structured, we use a smart shielded pool design, where typical like decentralized exchange uses an automated market maker, AMM, that was kind of made famous by like the original like Thorchain days and Uniswap. Well, those things are like automated to rebalance 50-50 after every trade. And the only way that prices actually restore back to market value is through arbitrage trading. So an arbitrage trader will see that the price of the token has fallen off, has quote unquote depegged from like the market price. And so they will go and balance the pool by either buying or selling into that pool to bring it back to market pricing. So this is like a very, very healthy thing that happens, and it's how decentralized exchanges stay current, so to speak, with market pricing. But this happens very, very frequently. It happens very fast. So those arbitrage traders are a necessary part of the ecosystem, but the only way you can do this is if you have multiple access points and places for them to do it. So if you're an arbitrage trader on Osmosis, typically your options are, Injective or maybe DYDX. You now have Elys as an option. But your major option was usually a centralized exchange. So you would probably buy on a centralized exchange and then come to Osmosis to sell it, or vice versa. So now you have the option to actually do it frictionless between Elys and Osmosis. You can do your arbitrage trading between the two platforms. And as a liquidity provider, you can arbitrage on the liquidity side, which is really cool for Elys. So what this does is it actually promotes transaction fees for both Osmosis and Elys, and liquidity providers can have a benefit as well in both places. So that's why I believe like this like healthy like market dynamic between Osmosis and Elys is actually really, really like positive. And I think users are already seeing the benefits today.
Nice. Gosh, I have two questions. I guess my first question, before it escapes me, how does Elys treat the liquidity providers versus protocol-owned liquidity over the long run? Like what's the strategy?
So we always put the users first. I think that's very evident in the way that we design the tokenomics, and then the way that the fees are shared. So 60% of fees collected go to liquidity providers, 25% go to stakers, and then 15% gets retained by the protocol. When I say retained by the protocol, that's not necessarily like actually retained, because from that 15%,
Back to the hub, right?
we take 15% of that goes back to the hub, and then another 15% is actually going to be used to buy Atom for the treasury. And that was kind of like a commitment that we made to kind of further strengthen our Atom alignment. So the rest basically goes to pay for infrastructure development, marketing if need be, et cetera, right? So we really, really heavily are geared towards user first, because we want the chain to be so decentralized and so self-functioning, self-sustaining, that generate that flywheel. So the fees that come in are shared by the users, by the liquidity providers, by the stakers. This is where we think that our tokenomics really shine, especially because our fees are paid in USDC. So when a user interacts with the platform, they don't have to worry about right now, obviously we do pay in Eden, which is our inflationary reward. But once our max supply is reached, everything is going to be done in USDC. So all fee collection and fee reward sharing will be done in USDC. So then you're free to do whatever you want with it without impacting the value of the chain, so to speak. Like you could take that USDC, you could stake it, you could swap it for any token you want. You could swap it for Bitcoin, you could swap it for Ethereum, you could send it home, right? Send it to fiat on ramp or off ramp, send it to a centralized exchange. Yeah, and it wouldn't matter, right? It would have zero impact on Elys. And that's kind of the point, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things that we talked about was it's kind of the same money sloshing around in crypto and it has been for a couple of years, and I can't wait till retail comes in and there's some new capital. And that being said, liquidity providers can be fickle and they go where the yield is for supplying their assets. And so I guess my thought was, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, but is having protocol owned liquidity, so there's like a backstop underneath the pools. Is that not in Elys's best interest for longevity?
Yeah, we can certainly take some of the protocol revenue that's generated and put that into the liquidity pools. So, this comes into the discussion of like how you manage your treasury. So one of the things that we got to witness along the way when 2021 through 2022 happened, and you got to witness actual teams like managing their own treasury for their projects and where they had actually put their funds and their assets. And unfortunately, a lot of teams were maybe kind of lulled into a false sense of security and putting it into UST, right? And so you had a lot of teams that were, essentially watched their entire treasuries get burned because of
that would be myself personally.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate, right? Because a lot of people just, maybe it was an education thing, maybe it was a big belief in that collateralized or algorithmic stable coins were going to work or something like that. But that's just an example. So what we're seeing now, though, there's a much more informed decision-making process in terms of how you diversify your treasury. So when you think about like Interchain Foundation or Interchain Labs, right? They have a good mix of Bitcoin and Ethereum along with their Atom, right? Which is really nice. It's really nice to see that diversification. You see Osmosis purchasing Bitcoin every month with the fees that they generate under DEX, and they could probably provide that as liquidity if they wanted to. So we're of the same mindset that we want to have a diversified treasury. We do want to probably have some of that working for us in the on the platform itself. So if we have a good mix of USDC that we could put into the USDC pool so people can borrow it for leverage LP, we'd love to do so. Same thing with Atom. The Atom would go into the Atom pool. If we buy Bitcoin, if we buy Ethereum, if we buy Solana, you name it. But it's going to be most likely like a very um, like telegraphed, like we don't want to do this in private. Like we would probably want to like have this discussion with the community and say, here is our treasury plan for the quarter or for the year, and here's how we want to rebalance it. And we'll do it in a very like methodical, very thoughtful manner. But you're absolutely right. Having that on the platform itself in the liquidity pools just strengthens the user's like confidence and ability to get better pricing. Although the pricing is already there with the liquidity with the smart shielded pool design because we match the best liquidity out there. But there's going to be a lot more opportunities for people to do more things. Like for example, like take on more leverage liquidity if the pools are deeper, right? Since we do have a cap on how much you can use for leverage liquidity, things like that. So absolutely agree with you. Protocol owned liquidity will have a place, and we want to be very, very thoughtful and very transparent about it.
Gotcha. Cool. So I got into Cosmos. So I bought my first Bitcoin back in 2014. I actually traded it for some marijuana seeds, and those immediately died. So I could have had a $100,000 marijuana plant. That never happened.
Man.
And then like 3 years later is when, in 2017 is when I really got into crypto. And I came from TradFi. I'm a former certified financial planner and managed retirement plans for people. And then after '08, really got into gold and silver and then crypto and blah, blah, blah. And then I came into Cosmos. I was using Exodus wallet and Osmosis airdropped, their tokens. And as an Exodus user, I wasn't able to claim the airdrop, which is, one of the things we'll talk about. And that kind of brought me from Ethereum over into Cosmos. And obviously the user experience is just night and day better in Cosmos than really anywhere. And so I'm curious what brought you into Cosmos from, I'm assuming, Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool story, by the way. I love that.
It's kind of like the most expensive pizza, except it was a dead marijuana plant.
Hey, you tried. You tried. That's the important part. For me it was 2017. I got my my first jump into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Although my buddy had told me about it back in 2011, and I briefly investigated and tried to figure out how to buy it, and then I gave up the search because I didn't know enough about it. But that was a big turning point for me because in 2017 I didn't have the knowledge base or the understanding of like what was actually being built. I knew what the kind of the vision of Bitcoin was, and having read the white paper and really trying to protect, so to speak, against like future manipulation and future like bad actors and things like that. And I really loved what that stood for. And then Ethereum comes along and essentially applies that same principle to software. And that is when things really clicked for me because like Bitcoin to me, okay, that's great. It's gonna act like digital gold. It will be, potentially depending on what day of the week it is, a hedge against inflation, right? Depends because it's so volatile. But there's so many things that like Ethereum unlocked that Bitcoin was never meant to do. And that's what got me really excited is the software side of things, that you could actually have this giant global decentralized app store, so to speak. Then along comes Cosmos, and Cosmos basically goes, okay, well, we're going to do that, but we're going to do it with proof of stake, right? Because back then it was proof of work for Ethereum. We're going to do it with proof of stake, but we're going to use the Internet of Blockchains concept. So instead of doing it with one blockchain, we'll do it with many, up to infinite amount of blockchains, depending on what you want, and we'll let you customize it. You get to decide how big your blockchain is. You get to decide how fast your blockchain is, how many validators, etc. And this is where the light bulb really went off over my head because it replicates so much of what the real world economy looks like. That there is no one size fits all solution in the corporate world, right? That's why you have regional banks versus like the larger money center banks. It's why you have, small towns versus big port cities. Everything has to be built a little bit differently to accommodate each unique situation. And Cosmos had the vision to recognize that very early on, where Ethereum was just like, nope, it's just going to be one big blockchain and everyone's just going to build their dApps on us. And that's the way it is, right? We're going to have a block time and you guys have to comply with our block time and that's it, right? And so that's where I saw the vision in Cosmos. And that's when I realized, okay, marry that with the potential that DeFi offers that basically puts the power in your hands. It is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not your guarantee of financial freedom. It's the guarantee that you get to control your financial freedom. And that's a big difference, right? Like you don't get to have financial success just by being a crypto user, but you get to have much more direct ability to determine your fate. And that's why I'm here. I'm here for the long run. I love Cosmos Hub. I think it will be a top 5. I don't care how long it takes. It's really building for the right reasons.
Yeah. So I love the multi-chain app thesis, and I thought that was a no-brainer right away versus one chain to rule them all. And we run validators also for Avalanche and for Polygon. And Polygon has the AG layer, which will soon be released, which is interconnected blockchains. And then Avalanche now has Avalanche 9000, which is sovereign app chains. And so I'm curious, if you're familiar with either of those ecosystems and how you think that plays with or against Cosmos in the long run.
I think this is really great to see these other chains incorporate this idea, right? And I think during ETH Denver this week, I believe there was a panel even talking about how Ethereum was actually migrating to a more Cosmos Hub-like philosophy. So that's going to take some time. So I'm encouraged to see this type of thing because number one, I think we can definitively say that this is not a winner-take-all industry. That you can't just have one blockchain that's going to dominate everything and the rest are going to go to zero. Like that, I think we've already proven that to be false. Two, the way you connect these blockchains to each other is really what's going to matter. So this is why, like talking to Interchain Labs with IBC version 2 Eureka, which is supposed to roll out at the end of March, it is a real game changer because now it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter if you are building on Cosmos or Avalanche or Polygon or Ethereum. You have that cross connectivity, seamless, low fee. You can build your user interface directly on top of any of these and interact with all of them. And the user is not going to know or care necessarily which chain they're on as long as what they're trying to do works. When I tap the button or I click the button, it does what I want it to do, period. Right. And this should not be like a surprise to anybody because it's essentially how the current version of the internet works anyway. Right. I don't know where when I click on a link, I don't know what country it's being routed through. I don't know what server hardware it's being processed through. I don't know if it's going through fiber optic cable or if it's going up through a satellite, but I don't care. Right. I just care that it works. And so that's why I think the mass adoption piece actually starts to happen is when you put all this infrastructure in place.
Yeah, I don't remember who posted it on X. I would give him props if I remember who it was, but someone posted a couple of weeks ago. We don't need more blockchains. We need more apps. We need more ways to bring consumers in. And yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, as a consumer, I don't care that my email is TCP/IP. I just want my email to get from A to B. And I think the same with apps on your phones. When you're using your Starbucks app and you get Starbucks points, do you care that there are blockchain rails underneath and that it's on Polygon, or do you just want your points? And so I think that yeah, I'm really excited to see what apps get built, and I do think that Cosmos provides one of the best, if not the best, ecosystems for builders because everything is so individualized for devs who were like, I can use this chain for this and this chain for that. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that I was using Exodus Wallet, and then that kind of brought me into Cosmos because of airdrops. And we keep track of airdrops, and we send out an email, we try and post it. And if anyone listening to this cares to check out the airdrop page on our website, it's atlas-staking.com, and then you can just click the airdrops tab. And I think if you click Atlas, or if you go to atlasstaking.com, it forwards over to Atlas-staking. But Babylon, registration just went live. Rivals Network, their claim ends on the 14th. Prism just launched. Story Protocol is active. Barachain, Side Protocol, which we're really excited about as a Bitcoin L2, just went live a couple of weeks ago. And so with chains being linked to each other and chains being able to secure each other, Babylon, I think, is fantastic. And I know it was conversation at one time where Bitcoin security was going to come to the Cosmos Hub. And since you guys are insiders, do you have any information on that and how Bitcoin and Babylon is going to integrate with the hub that you can share with whoever's on the call?
We love what Babylon's doing, right? When we were an early participant in their testnet, there's a couple major things that Babylon brings to the space, right? And the first, obviously, Bitcoin staking is super exciting because it just adds another layer of DeFi functionality, not just DeFi functionality, but also just some other really cool like network security features that you could now base off of proof of work to the Cosmos ecosystem. But the other thing that probably doesn't get talked about enough because it's definitely been overshadowed by that side of things is Bitcoin timestamping. And so what this means is essentially a snapshot can be taken from your own blockchain. So whether it be Osmosis, Elys, DYDX, Injective, whatever, a snapshot of the blockchain can be taken and then sent over and actually be included in a block on the Bitcoin ledger. That's actually really, really exciting for a number of reasons, right? One is you can now use it as a security tool. It now adds an extra layer of finality for you, immutability. You have information that can now be stored there for much like greater degree of confidence in terms of security and transparency. It allows, from a practical standpoint for a user, the takeaway is that you can bring down your unbonding times. So the standard Cosmos SDK unbonding time is 21 days. Elys has 14-day unbonding. But in theory, you can bring your unbonding way, way, way down with Bitcoin timestamping. So it's really cool functionality that actually comes from Babylon. With that said, I know they have partners like Lorenzo and other people that are going to be leveraging this technology to allow Bitcoin staking to come to various platforms. So while I don't know their exact timelines, I know they're just like working phenomenally. They've raised a ton of money. They have, many, many years of cash runway to build this out. So, it's not they have the luxury of like basically being able to kind of do this carefully and making sure they get all their, all the intricacies like taken care of. But when they do come, it's another pathway for people to now, bring their Bitcoin over to Cosmos and then essentially add DeFi functionality to their Bitcoin to, use it for borrow pools, use it to put up their Bitcoin as collateral to be able to do other things, maybe do loans, maybe do some leverage trading, perpetual trading, whatever they want to do with it, they can do it within Cosmos. And then meanwhile, bring TVL, bring value to the chain, to the ecosystem. So yeah, I wish I could speak more to like the timelines and some of the other stuff they're doing, but yeah, I know they're working very hard, and we should be kind of seeing those benefits very soon.
Yeah, we're super excited for Bitcoin Bitcoin DeFi, and we have a testnet validator for Babylon, and that's why we're really excited about Side. We validate them, and then also for Nomic, we run infrastructure for Nomic, and a few weeks ago, Osmosis integrated with Nomic, and so I guess my question is for you and for Elys to bring Bitcoin onto the Elys protocol platform, especially native Bitcoin. How would you guys work with a company like, or I should say, a protocol like Nomic or like Babylon?
So we're definitely waiting for Babylon to have those available for us. Since we have a great relationship with them, we speak with them on a regular. Once those are available, essentially it's just about creating the IBC connections, and then once you have that, you can actually then take the native version of the Bitcoin that's going to be available, and then create things like either liquidity pools, staking pools, borrow pools, etc. on Elys. So we're very, very excited to get those things integrated, and we think those things can't come soon enough. But of course, we want to make sure they're secure and everything is like very thoroughly tested. So we do appreciate that they're doing their due diligence there. But it is a game changer. It's big. I love that Osmosis is kind of like an early player in that. of course, using the wrapped version right now, but that's okay, right? Because Osmosis also has a great tool that essentially aggregates whatever version of the token you have, it aggregates it into a single liquidity pool, and then they kind of take care of that for you, so to speak. Are able to let you convert it back and forth, or lets you at least get the pricing based off like all those aggregated. So whatever format that comes in. So if it's Nomic and Babylon offering two different types or something like that, we'll probably offer something similar where we can, accept both forms of Bitcoin, so to speak, or a wrapped version versus a native version, et cetera, and then aggregate them so that they have the appearance of being in a single pool for practical purposes for the user.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was really lucky. I set my alarm for 3 a.m. and was able to get a Bitcoin Pioneer Pass from Babylon a few months ago. And so,
nice.
yeah,
Congrats.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I got in the first two rounds of staking actual Bitcoin too, and so I'm super excited for the airdrop to see what happens. But my expectations are modest because really I'm not doing anything. But yeah, so I think I have two questions left for you. Bringing Bitcoin investors over into proof of stake and into DeFi, I think one of the challenges is trust. And Elys, I think you said you guys have 36 validators right now. You're going to do 40. If a Bitcoin investor would say, well, that's not decentralized enough for me and I don't trust it, what would be your comeback?
Yeah, it depends on the actual size, like the size of the chain, right? So economic security, proof of stake makes a lot of sense in terms of how much security are you trying to provide based on how much assets you have on your chain. So as Ellis grows, we will need to increase our economic security. We will need to go from 40 to 50 to 60 to 100. That's the beauty of partial set security, is that it allows us to grow the network security side as we grow. So they have a point. Now, they have to provide network security, so to speak, for the Bitcoin network being, in the $1 trillion range. It's a much different level than what we're at. And the same thing with like Cosmos Hub. Cosmos Hub has $2 billion market cap. So you have to essentially distribute that network security over, I think is it 180 active validators right now with Cosmos Hub? Is that right? So that makes sense for a $2 billion market cap, right? So that's kind of the beauty of proof of stake, is you are allowed to right size it based on how much economic security you need. So proof of stake is actually really, really like great for that concept. So yes, it is grow as you go, or go as you grow, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. So for somebody who is like new to proof of stake, yeah, they will have a lot of questions about that. But it will become apparent on why that matters, like why you want to essentially not have too many nodes when you're talking about the governance process, and you're talking about how like the infrastructure, too much infrastructure doesn't make a lot of sense. Like you don't build an 8-lane highway in a small town of 50,000 people, right? So I think, yeah. So I think what they basically will come to realize is that there is a place for what Bitcoin does, which is essentially, makes it very, very easy for people to send assets back and forth, and it only serves one purpose, but it's a really good purpose. But in the same manner, I don't need Bitcoin network to have a block time of 6 seconds, right? Bitcoin has a block time of what, 9 minutes, 9 to 10 minutes. So
I tell you, I sent some Bitcoin base last week and it took like an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh wow. Okay. That's
yeah.
Yeah. Although that might be due to Coinbase itself, right? Because if it was the Bitcoin network, it would probably directly Bitcoin. It would have been what, 9 or 10 minutes, right? So
no, actually, you know what? I take it back. It was from one Bitcoin wallet address to another. I try and keep one anonymous, and then I send to Coinbase from the second address. And yeah, it took about an hour and a half to go from one Bitcoin address to another, and the network was just bogged down.
Oh, because it was bogged down. Yeah, yeah. The blocks were never designed to handle that many transactions, and so each block is actually oversubscribed, not the right word, but overfilled with transactions in the queue. So, in the same manner that I would not demand that Bitcoin needs to be a 5-second block time or a 3-second block time, I'm happy with the fact that it's 9 to 10 minutes because it serves its function very well. In the same way that I would appreciate if somebody like knew that about proof of stake, that the reason why we are right sized with a smaller set of validators is because of the economic security that we provide. but that we need to provide. So to that point, though, trust is a big deal. We do have to essentially do our due diligence when we talk about staking with a governor, right? So our governors can be validators, right? So we have some validators who are governors, and then we have the validators. The trust comes from the economic security of Cosmos Hub. So the 36 validators that we have right now, up to 40, that trust comes from being established players within Cosmos Hub.
Nice. Well, I know you guys are big on educating, and I think the analogy of you don't build an 8-lane highway in a small town is it makes a lot of sense, certainly. I think I got one last question I want to hit you with, and then we'll open it up to see if anybody who is on the space has any questions. Privacy is hopefully going to be something that crypto investors care about before too long. And I don't personally have really much experience with Shade Protocol. But with Penumbra coming out and Namada, and I'm a long time secret token holder back when it was called Enigma even. And so I'm curious what your take is on anonymity and privacy for DEXs.
That is a great question. How much time do we have?
I guess with the bullet point version. And does Elys have any plans? I don't know. Can you integrate with the privacy chain?
So our goal is to definitely be open to having those connections, right? So when we launched our chain, I believe Secret was, if it wasn't right at the beginning, it was right after the beginning. That Secret, we opened a liquidity pool because we actually really like Secret. Penumbra, we're excited about them too, and I'm sure they will exist on our platform in the future. So I guess the first step is defining, or the user should be aware of the differences between privacy and anonymity, right? And I think often those two get conflated from like a very basic level. Everybody has a right to privacy. Everybody has a right to privacy. I want to make that clear because you should not have your name attached to all of your transactions that you do in the space, because that's not something that is either required or necessary, or even like a thing that people should have on their in their thought process. Because what we look for in transparency when we're looking at a ledger is the transparency of the actual data, right? We look at the movement of assets, what occurred. Is there like malicious behavior going on, unnecessary leverage? Those are the types of things that we were trying to solve when we were talking about putting things up on a public ledger. We were not saying, hey, what did John do today? What did you have for breakfast today? Like that was not the purpose of creating a blockchain. And so privacy is still at the very forefront of what we do. We do not want anybody's privacy to ever be violated. It's one of the reasons why we're very big on like wanting to speak to regulators and wanting to have a seat at the table, because you get to be a part of the regulatory environment if you're actually sitting with them, telling them, hey, here's the difference between privacy and anonymity. Like, you don't need to know their names. You just need to know that the activity occurring on the chain is legit. And that's it, right? That's really what regulators care about. Now, on the anonymity side, that's where maybe things can get a little bit more nuanced, because you have to still comply with your local jurisdictions, right? Which means that if the police, Interpol, FBI, CIA, whoever wants to investigate something, they still have to be able to find it. So the perfect example is the Bybit hack of the $1.4 billion Ethereum, that was taken from Bybit. Even though it was done with a multi-sig and they signed off on everything, they were defeated and the money was taken. So do the people who took that $1.4 billion, that was private, but do they have a right to being anonymous? And that's the question, because some people will say, well, if it occurred on a blockchain, too bad for these guys. They have to deal with the consequences of what they did wrong with their multi-sig, or no, we should go catch those guys because they stole the funds, right? So this is where the conversation lives, and I cannot be the person who makes that opinion or decides that for people. I think that's more of a thing that the community as a whole needs to come together and decide on some sort of sensible policy to kind of like, one, make it comfortable for people to put their funds in the space, and two, have some sort of comfort or some sort of like backstop or some sort of relief knowing, hey, my privacy is going to be protected, but it doesn't mean I can go out there and do really malicious things.
Nice. Okay. Well, we're coming up on an hour, so probably a good time to wrap up. Just to reiterate for anyone out there, we do keep track of airdrops, just gratis for the community, which you can find on the airdrop page on our website at atlas-staking.com. And then I guess just shameless plug before we open it up for questions. We are trying to get into the Cosmos Hub Atom active validator set. And the promotion that we're running is a collectible NFT launched on Asteroid Protocol as an inscription that provides monthly Atom airdrops all the way out until 2030. And so, and that's 100% commission rebate. So we think it's pretty attractive. And so we think it's going to help us get into the active set pretty soon. And then with that, I just want to open it up. If anyone has any questions or comments, just raise your hand and then I'll drop you in as a speaker.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. If you're able to drop that link, I think you dropped it before on X, but if you're able to drop it in the conversation link here for the space, it might be easier
I
for
don't know
people
if I
to
know where the
grab.
conversation link is.
Like if you're using mobile, it's going to be in the bottom right-hand corner, the little chat box there. You can drop it in there. But yeah, I love this effort. You guys are OGs. You guys have been there for a long time. Obviously we'll do everything we can from our end to support you guys in this effort because of your education focus. You guys are very active. You guys are certainly not going to miss an upgrade. I know that was in the news recently about a few Cosmos validators who missed the most recent upgrade, and I think
So we
that's.
actually happen to be in the active set right now because some big guys missed the upgrade, and we'll get knocked out, when they unjail. But yeah, I get it. And in all fairness to the validators, it does happen every now and then.
It does. It does. The interesting thing, though, to be jailed this long means that they're not paying attention at all, and
No,
that's bad, right? So that means they're not using any kind of monitoring services. That means some of them might have even lost their keys. I mean, who knows, right? There might be some things that like that they're very obviously exposed by being down for this long. And so um, this is what I like. I don't mean this to be like a negative statement against the people who missed the upgrade and the people who are like not paying attention to their validator. What I am saying is you guys are a real refreshing alternative because you guys are on top of things. You're very active. You communicate with your community. You want to help them out. And so that's something we love to see in the space. We love to see that kind of leadership and that type of like, you want to set the example for others to follow. And people will follow it. People will say, why should I stake with this particular entity that doesn't actually do anything for anybody? They just kind of take their commissions and go on their merry way, but they don't actually participate in any kind of like community building or ambassadorship for like growing the space. So what you guys are doing is huge. It's going to pay off big. And anytime I see that type of activity, anytime I see somebody who's like got these really great intentions, hey, I get it. You need to get paid, right? Your commissions are there to cover your infrastructure. And for like the big guys out there like Pokachu and all those people who this is like their primary means of income, we shouldn't give them a hard time over collecting commissions to pay for their infrastructure because what they do is so valuable, right? Like this is the real deal. Like good luck trying to support this many chains, spending all this money on hardware, servers, connections, security, advertising, everything that you do. You should absolutely be able to cover those costs. That's the whole point of like this kind of fully functioning economy. So again, like you guys deserve that, and at the same time, you should be rewarded for the great work you're putting in. And so that's what I'm going to do for you guys. Like any chance I get to help you guys out, I absolutely will do so.
awesome, Hisham. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. I I'm a finance guy, not a tech guy. Although X shouldn't be all that complicated. I don't see anywhere to post a link like a chat feature on desktop. So for anybody listening, if you go to our X page once this call is over, I'll post a link to the promotion so you can kind of check it out and see if it's something that you have any interest in. And no hands have gone up. I don't see any questions or anything. So Hisham, thank you so much for joining me. I feel like I know a whole lot more about Elys and about you, and yeah, I'm stoked to be connected and love Cosmos so much. And so I'm excited to see how our paths cross over and over again throughout time.
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for everything you do for the space. Yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Cool, guys. Everybody have a good weekend. Bye bye.
Cheers.